Welcome back everyone. This is a part 3 video. So in last video we are access smart console and configure network object, network configuration and host object. Now we are going to add our both gateway. So for both gateway, the gateway is our CP1 and CP2 and the IP is 100.240 and 100.250. Go to our smart console, click here, select the gateway, go to wizard mode and then give the name the gateway. So I'm using same CP1 and select open server. What is our IP for gateway 1? 192.168.100.240. Select next and the activation key. So we giving the activation key is admin@321. When we install gateway, we configure activation key. Select the next option and close. We configure on clusters. So untick this option and finish. Now we are going to add our second gateway. First gateway is added. Now for second gateway, select here, click gateway, select wizard mode, and then the second gateway name we are using CP2. Select open server. IP for second gateway is 192.168.100.250. Click next and we are giving the activation key. I configure same for both firewall and click next. So our second gateway also accessible and untick it, this option and finish. So both gateway is added and we are going to publish the change. Now we are going to configure both gateway as a cluster. So what is cluster? So if one gateway is by default or any other reason is going down, so other gateway is access every traffic goes through our second gateway. So our second gateway act as a standby for if our first gateway is active, then second gateway is standby. We are going to configure also load balancing and high availability. So what mean high availability? If one is failed, other in one is active. So this is our cluster CP1 and CP2. So for CP1, CP2, we have to configure virtual IP. For management, we give virtual IP this and LAN, and when we have to configure virtual IP. So LAN, duplicate this. So for LAN, I'm going to virtual IP using this IP. We are going to use virtual IP is 10.10.10.200 and I'm going to bold and this is virtual IP for our LAN interface. So our gateway for every for server and PC is 10.10.200 and same for our WAN we are using virtual IP. In your case we have to use only free available IP. So in my case, my virtual IP is because I know I have multiple IP free, so I'm going to use this IP. In your case, you should check first this IP is available or not, then you configure. So virtual IP is required to share both firewall to access for both firewalls. So we have to configure virtual IP. For management, this is our virtual IP, and for WAN, this is our virtual IP. Now I'm going to access our just a wait. Now we are going to open our smart console and configure cluster configuration. So remember virtual IP. Virtual IP is accessible for gateway. So both firewall is accessible from same this virtual IP. And going to access our smart console. Now right now we are going to configure as a cluster CP1 and CP2. So how to configure cluster? Select this option, go to cluster and select the cluster and go to wizard mode and give the cluster name. So I give the this is our headquarter. So giving the HQ cluster name, you can give whatever your name. And what is cluster IPv4 address? So this is our management interface virtual IP. So what is management interface virtual IP? We are using 192.168.100.200. So give the IP is 192.168.100.200. We are using high availability, not we are not using load sharing. I'm going to use high availability. Click the next option and then add your both gateway. So select add existing gateway CP1. Click OK. Press yes, and your CP1 is added here. So wait for, and then we are going to add our CP2, our second gateway. Add as an existing gateway. Select your CP2 gateway. Press OK. Yes and yes. So both gateway is added. Now we going to click next, then click next and click next, 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 next. Press yes. Edit the cluster properties. Finish. So we have to configure virtual IP on each cluster interface. So cluster interface role is installed. Go to network management. So this is the cluster interface. So the virtual IP should be configured. Remember the bond one. So we configure Ether channel on both gateway. Ethernet 3 and Ethernet 4 is a single logical interface. So what IP we are using? So on CP1 we are using 10.10.10.20.240, and for CP2 we are using 10.10.250. But for accessing both gateway, so we are using virtual IP is 10.10.20, not 20. I'm going to use 200. So I'm going to configure 200. So we are using 10.10.200. So for board one, we are going to this is our cluster interface. So select cluster and then give the IP 10.10.10.200. You can see CP1 IP is 240 and CP2 IP is 250. And modify override. This is internal network specified, or this is our LAN interface. Select the LAN interface because this network is on LAN interface. Remember, we configure network object LAN interface, and this is our inside. So this is our inside zone. To give the name is inside. Press OK, then OK, OK, and net mask is equal. Okay, there is giving the net mask is 24. Press OK. Now it's OK. This is virtual IP. For Ethernet 0, Ethernet 0 is our management interface. So management interface virtual IP is 192.168.100.200. So we are going to give virtual IP. This is a cluster. Give the IP 192.168.100.200. And remember the mask length should be 24. Modified override. This is a specific network. What a specific network is management interface, and the zone, this is management zone. So I'm going to configure management zone. Press OK, then OK, then OK. Now we have to configure external. So configure as a cluster. So what is our external interface virtual IP is 192.168.1.200. Remember your case tells everyone should use different IP, not the same 192.168.1.200. You should not use same IP in my class. So remember, everyone should have to use different interface network virtual IP. So I'm going to use 192.168.1.200, and the prefix we are using 24. Select modify, override, specific. This is our WAN interface and this is on outside zone. So give the name outside. Press OK. Now select OK option. Press OK. This is our Ethernet 2. So there is no virtual IP for Ethernet 2. This is only for synchronize. So we have to configure only synchronize on this interface. Select sync and press OK. Done OK. Now click yes and then publish the change. Publish. Wait for publish. Then we are going to install. So before installation we have to enable the global properties for ICMP ping. Accept the ICMP request, log implied, press OK. Then install the publish and install. Click install. Wait for installation. So policy is successfully installed and we have to check if our license is enabled or not. Manage the license and package. Click OK. Click yes. 15 days license on our SMS and should be on our firewall also. Right click get the license. Right click get the license on both firewall. And then also we have to, I think we don't have to install the policy. So both firewall is active in cluster. Now I'm going to configure one security rule. So right now we cannot access our firewall. You can see, uh, check if our firewall is still accessible or not. Refresh this page. I think it is accessible because we have to refresh. So right now it is accessible. I think continue. No, it's not accessible because of there is no policy for reaching our firewall through our management PC. So both firewall is not accessible. So we are going to configure our first policy and we are going to configure inline policy. So we have to configure on our part 4 video. So this is our part 3 video where we configure cluster and check your both firewall is up and running on in cluster. So thank you everyone.